I don't know how to feel. And I'm just sort of like, well, I don't know what I believe in, but I think I just saw God. Like it felt like I saw God. So I get to and I'm crying, and I get to the workshop and I tell everybody what happened, and everybody's like, oh my God, Carmen, they're so stinky. They're so this. Oh, I hate them. Not everybody, but like a lot of people were not like, oh, Carmen, like those, you shouldn't get too close to those people. And I'm just like, but that was God.
Hey, Common Sensor, thank you so much for joining us today. I have one of my most favorite women. She is such a kick ass writer, producer, teacher, award winning. Her plays have been produced all over the world. And when I say all over the world, I mean all over the world. Moscow, Chile, Puerto Rico, and it goes on and on and on. Because she's that bad. She's a bad ass. I just want to introduce you to one of my favorite people, Carmen Rivera. Hey, Carmen, how are you?
Hi. I'm fine. How are you? How are
I'm
you?
great. First of all, I've been so excited to see all the stuff that you've been doing. Uh, how you've been just you and Cándido Tirado is her husband, and they do some amazing work, individually and together. So I want to first talk to you about how you got started. You know, where did you grow up at?
Great. I grew up in Manhattan, actually. I was born in Mount Sinai in East Harlem.
Oh,
So, and then I grew up in the Dykeman projects in Inwood Heights.
okay.
Uh, but I just want to, I just want to thank you so much, Lydia, for this. I've been a fan of yours. I follow your show, so I'm honored to be
Well,
on Common Sense Mamita. Like, thank you.
thank you.
So gracias, gracias. Um, uh, yes, I grew up in Inwood Heights, Dykeman projects, and it's interesting because it was back when the projects, like I can tell you when the drugs came in. Like I was there pre-drugs, and then the drugs came in, and then things changed. But I feel really blessed to have grown up there because it was completely integrated. I did not know uh, that people sort of hated each other, not sort of, that really hate each other. And the projects, you had like all the older ladies sit in the benches, and it was like African American, Jewish, Italian, Irish, Puerto Rican, Dominican, and Cuban all mixed together. So I feel very blessed. That's what the Dykeman projects were like in the late 60s. So
Yes. And then heroin came in, and then PCP came in.
absolutely.
Yes.
And that's when you saw the needles in the stairwell and people urinating in the elevators. But I remember the pre. I was. I mean, I didn't. That stuff didn't start happening until I was like 12 or 13. So I have a lot of memories of the community and a communal feeling before that.
When did you start getting into writing?
I always loved reading and stories, and going back to Inwood, the library. We'd have free puppet shows in the summer, and my mother used to take me, and then she said I could get 2 books every week. And my mother started reading to me. So by the time I started kindergarten, I knew how to read and write. Um, and I just always loved stories. And then without knowing it, I think I was doing the job of a playwright without knowing it. My favorite show was Lost in Space. And I wanted to be on that ship with them so badly. So that I made up this whole story. Oh my God, I literally fantasized it every night. And Don and Judy, like, Don was like the second captain, and Judy was the oldest child. And I had this whole fantasy that they got married and had a little girl, and the little girl was me. So I had like a whole like notebook of her costumes and all the maldades, like all the mischievous things she would get involved with Mr. Smith and the robot. And,
Yes. Will, Danger, Will Robinson.
Yes. Oh my God. I remember. So I don't remember necessarily the instances, but I remember like we were stuck once on a flying asteroid or something, and we were all holding on, and I designed my costumes in pink and lavender, and like I was. So I think I was already doing the playwright's job without knowing it, but I always loved reading and I always loved stories, and I loved going to the library and taking books out. And then when school started, I didn't mind English class, and I didn't mind reading for for school. So I think it started young, but the idea of to be a writer didn't come much later. And it was in school. It was in college. I took a Spanish writing class, and it was expository writing. We could write whatever we would get assignments, but we could sort of like riff on the assignments. And my teacher called me one day after class, and I thought I was in trouble. And he's like, "You're a writer. You have a voice already. It just depends what you want to do with it." And I had always loved it, but I never thought about it. I don't know. It just didn't. I don't know. It's like you go to school, you're supposed to, be a doctor or get a proper education, not be an artist.
So the writing actually you started writing in Spanish first.
Well, it's interesting because it was in that class that I started to craft stories, not plays, but stories in Spanish, but I always wrote in English. It was this weird code switching because I don't think in Spanish, so I have to translate everything.
What was your first? Yeah. What was your first play that you wrote?
Oh my goodness! So, the very first play that I wrote was a play about about a husband and wife, and they have a big fight, and they kill each other. And they go into heaven. That wasn't my first service, my first proper play. And they go into the afterlife, and they're getting ready to reincarnate. And she's scared, and they find each other. And then, I was a very young writer, so I named him Lazaro, and I named her Nirvana. And it was sort of like she wasn't going to reincarnate, but then he was, and then maybe she would help him be a better man in the next life. So at the end they separate, but anyway, that was my first play.
And what was the first play you had produced?
Actually, Cándido started a theater company. Cándido Tirado, my husband, started a theater company with another woman named Gloria Zelaya, a director. And the first play I ever had produced with them, I'm just thinking now of the timing. It could have either been the Lazaro Nirvana play or an early version of La Gringa.
Oh, wow.
So I wrote a play called The Universe because Puerto Ricans, we all think, well, the mythology of Puerto Rico and La Borinqueña is that it's the navel of the world. So I called it The Universe, and it was just a sort of two scenes: a young woman with her uncle, and she's trying to get a job in Puerto Rico, and they won't hire her because she's not Puerto Rican.
Because she's a nuyorican?
Right. Well, they say she's not a Puerto Rican national.
Okay.
Which actually did happen to me.
That happened to me. Well, not get a job, but going to Puerto Rico and them telling me I wasn't Puerto Rican. I think that they wait for you to come to the island so they can scold you.
Right. And you don't speak Spanish, right? So it's funny, like after so many years, I was so nervous about my accent, and I'm just like, you know what? My accent is the accent of the diaspora. So there it goes. There's nothing I can do about that.
Yes.
And we're gonna go out to eat tonight. Tengo hambre. Like it's like let's get back to life. But my first play, I feel in a way that I know it was The Universe. The Universe was produced first, and then like the second season, I did Lazaro and Nirvana. I wanted to be more funky. play with, experimental theater. So
And where did you start getting the craft of playwriting?
it was in school, but then so so as an undergraduate, I actually studied economics and Latin American literature. So part of the Latin American literature major was to take the writing expository class in Spanish, the writing class in Spanish. Then I decided I should go back to school. So I went back, got my master's. So I took some playwriting classes there, and they weren't bad. They were, I feel I learned.
Mm-hmm.
I learned what the world of playwriting was like. But I met Cándido before I went to graduate school, and we totally clicked as people, as friends. Like we were clicked as friends, but then we also clicked artistically and spiritually. And he introduced me to his mentor. So I didn't really study with his mentor, as Cándido was with his mentor 7 years. Wow. I only had him maybe one summer. And I met him, and Cándido and I already started dating. So in a way, Cándido was my mentor, and I learned this Latin American this theory that the playwright, his name is Guillermo Gentile. So Cándido worked with him, and then I kind of was brought on as like the kid, like that was sort of like tagging along, and it was great because the theories made sense to me, and basically I don't know if Cándido went through. It was just like the irrational part of us is what lives and breathes in theater. And we're always looking for the reason, right? We're always looking, why is something happening? Why is the motivation? But the motivation doesn't have to be reasonable. Like it's a reason, full of reasons. So that for me made sense. So I would say, like, I kind of learned a conventional Western craft, Aristotelian craft in school, and Guillermo and Cándido brought me beyond that. Mm-hmm. Beyond that into irrational and parallel universes and an absurd, we would call it absurd theater or avant-garde, but it was beyond the Aristotelian. And Cándido's a structure fiend. Like he loves structure. So it's not like you throw it out, it's you add. Like it's always an and, it's never an or, right? Like we always lean to or in this kind of way. Well, if you support this, then you can support that. No, it's an and. It's an and. So that's where I began learning my craft.
What was the first play that you did that you felt was successful?
I would say La Gringa and the universe. Like going back to the one act that became La Gringa. That was the first time that I felt like, oh, maybe this is for me. I think I might be home. I think this is right. I think this feels right. Because when I was an undergrad in school, when I started writing stories, I was writing short stories. I didn't think about theater. And then I went to a workshop at the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. Oh, no, I'm sorry. I went to see a play at the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater, and they said free playwriting classes in the back in the program. And I'm like, that sounds great. Free playwriting classes. Okay. So I started going, and then there was when I realized I was a playwright.
Wow.
So I spent like 3 years writing short stories, influenced very much by the avant-garde Latin American writers, Jorge Luis Borges, and Cortázar, and Julio Cortázar, and Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Like it was sort of like this, like in the 80s, those were the writers.
Right.
And then, and I think that my writing was okay. But then when I found playwriting, I was like, oh no, this is it. And then I was working for an insurance company. I quit my job. I went back to school. I got my master's. That's when I met Cándido. So it's sort of like, as soon as I quit my job, Cándido invited me to join the company. So I was in the company while I was in graduate school.
Oh, wow.
So, that year, I met him in 88 and I quit in 1990. So So sorry to
No,
go
no, no.
take a circle
This is your
around
story, girl. You get to tell it however you want.
Well, thank you. But it was interesting because um, I have like this whole collection of stories. I mean, I had at that time, and I was like, I don't send them out. I don't know what to do. And I was always trying to find workshops. But as soon as I found playwriting, like it's like what they say that when you're ready, you find your mentor. When you're ready, you find your path. It was like the world just opened up. So then I got into school. I got a fellowship. I started writing plays in school, but then I started writing plays with Cándido and his company, and I wrote The Universe at that time while I was in graduate school. And I started to get readings, and I started taking all different workshops. So it just things started falling into place.
What was the first play that you took to a festival?
So it was with International Women's Theater Project, I think, and it was in the 90s. I think I was still in school, and I had written a play, actually, that we produced in our company called Plastic Flowers, and it was about a young woman who's mentally challenged in Puerto Rico, and she's mentally challenged because her mother was given drugs by um, by a pharmaceutical company. One of part of the
Experiments
on us.
Yes.
Yeah, so she's very guilty. So she's very detached with a young girl, and they told her that she has to get sterilized, and she's like 13 because she just got her period, so she's 13. So they're getting ready to make the decision, and somebody's picking them up to take them to the hospital to sterilize her, but she doesn't know, and she wants to have babies. And so it's a lot about fertility. The play's theme is fertility and sort of what happens in a colonized situation, but through this family.
Wow.
And what happened. So that was done. We produced it here. The company, Cándido and Gloria, it was actually called Shaman Repertory Theater. And we wanted theater to be healing. And so we produced it here, and then I submitted it to the International Women's Project, and it got done in Buffalo, New York. So I took the train all the way to Buffalo. It was great, and they put me up in a house, and it was really nice.
And when was your first play? When was your first play festival that you traveled outside of the country?
It was to Colombia, actually. The play, I had Plastic Flowers actually done in Chile, in Moscow, in theater conferences. But it was like professors brought the play and they did readings there, and I wasn't able to go. But my first proper tour, like proper festival outside of the country, was Colombia, which is the International Theater. They have a really big theater festival every 2 years. So we were part of it in 2002. So that was really exciting.
Oh, that is exciting. When you start writing, because you not only write plays, but you also write other stuff. What is how do you start? Do you have an idea? Do you have a theme? Do you have a character in mind? Is there like one way that you start, or does the piece inform you?
I think it's the latter. I think the piece informs me. I think it just depends if it's a commission, if it's an essay. Like I've been asked to write essays for different for presentations in conferences or in an online magazine. So they kind of like, for the conferences, like they ask me, just write whatever you want, but the theme is identity. And so they ask me, because being nuyorican, or what are we, diaspora, so we're bicultural, multilingual, multiracial. So if the theme, I get asked actually a lot to talk about identity. So that's one part of it. For plays, it just depends if it's a commission or not. Sometimes it's an experience. I remember once being on the train, going to a workshop actually at the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater. And I'm just sitting there, and I kind of have a face that people talk to on the train. I wish I didn't have it, but sometimes, you know.
You're open.
So,
You're open, Carmen. You just look like everybody's sister. Let me tell you what happened.
Yeah. And this guy came up to me and he goes, "Yo, mommy, mira, mommy, you're Puerto Rican, right?" And then I'm like, okay. I just surrender. This is fine. I'm on the train. It doesn't seem dangerous. And he goes, I could tell, even though you light skin, I could tell because we come in all different colors. I'm telling you, mama, you know that, right? I'm like, I know, yes, absolutely. That's what makes us beautiful, you know. And then he's like, yo, I'm messed up. Like, mama, can you give me some money? So I gave him like $1. And then he started crying. And he goes, my wife left me. She just left me. She took the kids, and I don't know what the F to do. And I'm just like, oh man. I'm just sort of like, I'm sorry, Papa. You know, I'm just trying to connect. And then a man came in to sing doo-wop. Perhaps he was homeless. I mean, he looked like he was living it really rough. And the guy wakes up, like not wakes up, but he stands up and goes, oh man, I love doo-wop. Oh my! And he starts singing with the homeless guy, which I perceived might have been homeless. And you could tell the man was a little like scared. And then he's singing with him, and he's like, give money to this guy. Come on, he could sing." And the guy could sing actually. Like he was like, I'm thinking maybe he was a singer.
Down on his luck. Yeah, down on his luck.
Manager ran away with the money or something. I don't know. And he goes, oh my God, you have such a beautiful voice. And this was like during Giuliani's time. He's like, I don't care what Giuliani says, you could get money like this. And then I started to realize something's happening literally right in front of me. And then he collapsed. Oh, he wants him to sing When We Get Married. And he says, I don't know it. He goes, I'll teach it to you. And he starts trying to teach him. And the guy's like, yo, man, brother, look, I gotta go. And the guy collapses, starts crying, and the man that came in to sing sits on the floor and hugs him like a pietà. And I was just like I was stunned, and I started crying. And then I had to get off the train to go, and the Puerto Rican Traveling Theater is on 47th. And I'm walking there and I'm crying and I don't know how to feel. And I'm just sort of like, well, I don't know what I believe in, but I think I just saw God. Like it felt like I saw God. So I get to and I'm crying, and I get to the workshop and I tell everybody what happened, and everybody's like, oh my God, Carmen, they're so stinky. They're so this. Oh, I hate, not everybody, but like a lot of people were not like, oh, Carmen, like those, you shouldn't get too close to those people. And I'm just like, but that was God. Yes. So that, I say that because I recently, that play I wrote in the 90s, and I recently had it read about a year ago. So it's and I realized like where it came from. So it's been in my consciousness. So from there, I wrote a play. I wrote a monologue, and then it ended with the singer coming in. And then in another instance, this whole family of women are going to prison to visit their men, and they're all dressed up, and they're like, take a picture of me. And when it was disposable before cell phones, and I was like, wow. And then there was an older woman, like maybe like the la abuela, like the grandmother, and I'm like, wow, what, like, and this was, I was actually going to a teaching artist job in Bushwick, and it was off the J train. So then that, like that was another imprinting. So then I combined the two stories, and I wrote a play about this group of people that get stuck on a train.
Wow.
So that was like, in a way, the muse, right? The muse comes in all different ways. Other times it's a commission, and then you do research and you start trying to connect to the character and find something that, an entry point in. But it's funny because it's called The Next Stop. And I just heard it read it was early 2019. And I was like, oh my God, I haven't heard this play in a long time. And it like, that, you know, it has my heart, that play, because that how humanity gets through its day, I don't know.